You are listening to Withstood, produced by Crossbrand.
Welcome to Withstood. If you ever wondered what a canine officer, false accusations, and an Elijah moment have in common, you're going to love our next guest on Withstood. Folks, we have been on a little bit of a sabbatical from podcasting. We do so many things around here in regards to social media, but I got to be honest with you, we really feel we believe in the validity of these podcasts, especially when God sends us very unique and gifted people with disasters in their life. You know, this podcast is called Withstood, and it's called Withstood for a reason. My name is Mike Morrow. I'm the lead pastor at Crossbrand, and I'm excited today to have my friend and a well-known law enforcement official in Wood County, Texas, which is my home. We have today on the podcast Kelly Smith. Kelly, it's so good to see you. Thank you for coming in to visit with us. Absolutely. Hope your coffee's good.
It is.
Good as I said?
Yeah, it is good.
Yeah, I think that's came from the top secret, top shelf here at Crossbrand. Kelly, I don't even really know where to start. I went on a journey with you, I guess it was about a year and a half ago.
Yes, sir.
And it was very eye-opening to me. My wife was part of that journey on one day, the final day of sentencing, and she said she has no idea how in the world you survived. She was in so much distress and had so much anxiety that final day that we'll finally get to on this podcast.
Yeah.
You're doing good though, right?
I'm doing great.
Yeah.
Blessed more than we deserve.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about Kelly. So, well, first, I want to hear about your family. What you got there?
Great. Family is great. Aubrey's graduating this year from Texas A&M. She's wrapping that up and making some career choices. Jason is finishing up his college in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah, baby girl, is graduating high school this spring.
Yes.
And she's down to 2 colleges of selections and pretty much picking which dance team she wants to be on. And it's between ACU and OSU, it sounds like.
Oh, my goodness.
So she wants to dance big.
Yeah.
And we're going this weekend to watch one of her competitions, and then got one coming up in Tennessee, so it's all over the map with that. And Rachel's doing great. She got 3 kiddos running around. The 3 grandbabies keep us all busy, and
absolutely
2 of them are feral.
But beautiful kids, though. You've got great kids, and you got great grandkids too. And you're number one boss, second in line only to Jesus. Tell us a little bit about Miss Renee.
She is doing great. She's been my rock. Been married 25 years coming up this April.
Oh, my goodness. Bless her.
Well, yes, put up with me for that long. She's been amazing. Her faith has definitely come to the forefront many times. She's the glue that keeps our family together, without a doubt. Yeah.
During some of your tough times, I would often catch myself staring at her, watching for reactions.
Oh, I stare at her too. That's okay.
I think we did it for different reasons. I was just waiting at any minute for her to pass out. And that lady's tough, Kelly.
She is.
That lady is got lots of endurance, lots of Jesus in her. And she's a vet too.
She is a vet. She's we've owned the clinic since 1996.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah. And she started it from the ground up of absolutely nothing to a 5,400 square foot monster with 3 doctors in there.
You bet. It's a great clinic.
It's a blessing for sure.
Great clinic. I just happen to know somebody who works there.
Yes, you do. Yes,
my daughter-in-law.
Yeah, that's our plug for Lindell Vet Clinic. Again.
That's right. That's right. Hey, Kelly, tell me now, before we get to your law enforcement career, where did you graduate from high school?
So I was actually born in Waco.
Okay.
Till I was 12, I was brought up in a little town outside of Waco called Lorena.
Uh-huh.
My parents got married young. I lost my little sister when I was about 2 years old, so I never really got to know her, but that definitely affected my mom and dad's relationship. They split up at about 6 when I was 6. At 12, I got moved to Arlington, Texas, which was a huge culture shock.
Big deal.
Yeah, I went from a entire school district on one little campus to 2 grades in junior high was the campus size of my little school in Lorena, so that was a culture shock. And I still hold to this day that I was shot at more in Arlington in high school than I was in 27 years as a cop. But it was a good experience. I met a lot of good people. Still keep in touch with a lot of them. Left Arlington, went straight to the Marine Corps. Served around the country. I never did leave stateside. I was always either in California, Virginia, or Washington State. That was the 3 states I went to. And came back home and got into law enforcement. Met my bride, and 27 years later, I'm retired.
What in the world drew you to law enforcement?
When I was 14 in Arlington, I was actually in Law Enforcement Explorers. Both my grandfathers were in law enforcement. One's retired Alaska State Trooper, and one's retired Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission.
My goodness.
So, grew up around it and always looked up to them. And then when I got back home from the Marine Corps, it was in my blood. I was in the Explorers the whole time, and even started 3 or 4 Explorer posts while I was in, watching the kiddos. And I still keep in touch with some of them. They've gone on in the military and law enforcement. And
27 years is how long you was in law enforcement?
27 years, 4 months.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Yep.
4 years in Marine Corps.
No, I did about 2 years in Marine Corps. Got out and took care of family, and then. One other thing that came from that is I've been the commandant of our Wood County Marine Corps League for 8 years now, going on 9th.
Which is a pretty strong organization.
Yeah,
we see you.
They're everywhere.
Often.
We do a lot. We have a lot of missions. If anybody, I tell the new folks when they show up, it's not something we just sit and meet once a month. It's wide open all year round.
Yeah.
We get about a 1 month break, and that's
and y'all are doers.
We are.
Yeah,
100% doers.
Yeah,
yep.
yeah. So, Kelly, 27 years, that's quite a while. How old are you now?
Be 50 this year.
Okay. Everybody's young.
Mm-hmm.
27 years. What was your first assignment?
I was actually at the Grand Saline Police Department as a reserve and working on the side, teaching at used to be called On Target with Mark Wilson. Mark was killed in that downtown Tyler shooting. The one laying on the curb or what have you. But doing both of those while I was going through the police academy. I was going through the police academy at night, and you could actually, in phases, get phase 1 and go reserve, and then work on phase 2, phase 3. Shortly after that, I got got on with Canton Police Department, which is where I attached to DEA task force, and worked there for a while, and then ended up being back in Wood County. Police chief left, so I couldn't promote up anymore. And they offered me a position as a sergeant at the Mineola Police Department. And then took a job as police chief in Van, and I had a lot of good guys working for me. I had a good city council, but like any small town, things change. And then came back to Wood County, ran for constable in 2016, did that for 8 years, and wrapped it up.
My goodness.
Yeah.
My goodness.
It was a good run. Met a lot of good people.
In general, not what you've experienced over the last 2 or 3 years, but in general, what are some of the greatest difficulties? Just looking back, some of the stuff that you've had the hardest time processing from being in law enforcement, some of the greater difficulties.
I think the training aspect, I've been very adamant about training since about 2000. Taught at the police academy with a lot of in-service training with East Texas Police Academy, and then did a few police academy classes for recruits. The hardest thing was getting administration to see the importance of training. And it seems now that the grants after Uvalde and all that stuff, they're really picking up the pace on funding. And I don't blame it all on the administrators, because most of the time they don't have the time, they don't have the money or the resources to do the training for the officers. But became friends with Jeff Hammond and Lindell with jiu-jitsu, and he's got a phenomenal gym that he and I just paired up, and he was my partner at the constable's office. And I started training with him about 10 years ago. Stayed active with him for about 6. And we got real heavy into training officers jiu-jitsu, and it saved me on the street several times. Because the neat thing about it is our philosophy was to control somebody without hurting them or without hurting ourselves. So that went a long way. So that was a challenge. The training challenge was definitely there. I always sought out the camaraderie and the brotherhood of law enforcement. And if you graded the camaraderie on law enforcement at a funeral, it's 150%.
Yeah, I see that. But
on a day-to-day basis, it's not that. I only found that close of a camaraderie when I was a SWAT commander in Canton with our team that was small. And I found it in the DEA task force because, the guys were a tight-knit group doing high-risk stuff on a regular basis. And Jeff and I had it with Juma and Mata. So, it was our two human, one dog show. So we had it there. So that's always been a challenge, but that's just people business. It is what it is. So you just have to accept it as what it is and just keep them close and just keep trying.
And so I get to hang out with cops at different functions. And I was just at the DPS. They had a competition over there. Sergeant Kimball took me over there. And we had such a great time being with law enforcement. I see the camaraderie.
Yeah.
I see the brotherhood. The other thing I saw that day, and it makes me proud on one hand. The other thing is that as a parent, it unnerves me just a little bit. But Kelly, the age of so many officers now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of young guys going into law enforcement.
Yeah.
A lot, and like I say, I'm proud on one hand, and then it scares as a parent.
Yeah.
And a grandparent, it scares me to death on the other. But what is something that you spoke to the difficulty? What is the one thing you would say to these guys about hanging in there?
Their faith. You've absolutely got to have both feet in with your faith. I had the opportunity to do 2 different chapters of Fellowship of Christian Peace Officers. The groups were small, and it was a county-wide deal, very small. But, in their defense, they're working off-duty jobs, trying to make ends meet. They're working shifts, sometimes 12-plus hours. They've got to keep up with the kids. They've got to take care of their brides. I think probably the most important thing is the order in which they prioritize, and it's God, family, and then the job. And if that ever gets out of whack or out of order, then you're looking at, obviously, the fallout.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Well, it's not a rabbit trail, because before we get to really the crux of your story, and guys, you're going to hear some stuff from Kelly here in a minute. It's going to probably trigger me and unnerve me again from what I saw and experienced, and as I walked with him through these dark times. But tell us about your faith. What has your journey been like? Because I haven't even got to talk about Mata yet.
Yeah.
But let's talk about that journey.
Okay.
Because really the first probably one of my first experiences with you was in the context of ministry, not, me knowing you as a trainer, as a protector, law enforcement. You was in a little country church, and let's just talk. Yeah. What's your journey been like? I mean, has this faith thing been something real to you since you were a little bitty, or?
Well, I have to give it to my grandparents. I always, even in the Marine Corps, I'd get these you remember those little papers that said daily prayer?
Absolutely.
I'd get them in the mail all the time when I was in the Marine Corps from my grandma. So she led me, she kept me in church. I was saved when I was 9 in a little Baptist church in Lorena. And, saved at 9, obviously the age there, you don't have any idea what it's about. You're definitely on the milk still. Carried that through the Marine Corps. I got to know our chaplain. They assign a chaplain in boot camp, and then you keep in touch with them in infantry school and stuff like that. Got out of the Marine Corps, and got back to East Texas. My uncle brought me here. He had a little business, and I did that while I was going to the police academy and working in the sheriff's office. But I was, of course, saved at 9, like I said, and then I went over to Hubbard Chapel in about 2005 and surrendered to the ministry. I was youth minister for about 6 years. Learned a lot from those kids, and there's a lot
Absolutely.
to learn. They taught me as much, if not more, than I could ever teach them.
Yeah.
It was a very strong law enforcement church. Kenny Ray, Larry Vaughn, some of our legends, I think, in East Texas were there, and I knew I better do right because I was taking these church kids of these mentors in my mind in the law enforcement circle to Arkansas and going hiking with them. And I think Larry makes about 5 of me, and he pulled his quad one day and we walked down a mountain together, and I was his crutch. So we bonded a lot with that one. But so surrendered the ministry in 2005. Did that for, like I said, for about 6 years. And then the pastor at the time moved to another church. So I covered the pulpit for about a year. And then I went back. I was bivocational the whole time, still in law enforcement the whole time.
Sure.
And and then after that is when I started. I knew my calling was still there. I think he may have reassigned me in a sense. So I put my passion for the ministry towards law enforcement and did what I could. Probably not as active as I should have been. Always looked at that side, but I look back in my life and always saw where he propped me up on my leaning side, just like an old shed. But he did that, and there's so many aspects of my life. Even when so Aubrey is 21 now, she was born into this world. We sat in the hospital, and they said she's perfect, not even a birthmark, ready to go home tomorrow. They woke us up about 3 o'clock that morning and said, we got a problem.
Goodness.
Yeah, she said her aorta and pulmonary arteries are reversed, so she had to have her heart disconnected.
Oh,
main arteries,
I have never heard this part of your story.
The main arteries reconnected. 10 days after she was born, she was on a metal table getting operated on, and our church from Hubbard Chapel showed up. And I knew then he still had us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then I'll never forget, the doctor came in, and I swear that guy was 7 foot tall and had hands the size of that barrel. And I just looked at him and said, how are you going to operate on my baby girl? And that was our miracle. She's never been on medication, never, just danced all her life, been athletic. And she is my pistol.
Absolutely.
Yeah, she's one of the 4 that are definitely my strong ones. And so I knew then that he still had his hand on us, and I've never doubted. I hear some people say, well, I'm mad at God. And I've never been mad at God, because if I'm mad at God, that's a me thing. And I'm not saying it's wrong to be mad at him by any means. I just knew that he was there, and his grace is absolutely sufficient for anything that we're going through. And that's obviously scriptural, but it's not just a phrase on a bumper sticker.
No. And we don't ever really understand that until
you experience it. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And, I've been asked to speak at several churches over the years, and I never say no, because in my mind, I'll clear my schedule, just like you when you said, hey, you want to. Well, of course, just show me where you want me.
Yeah, you bet. I wanted you to tell your story for a long time. Yeah. So I do, for you to tell part of this last part of your story, you got to tell us about those 4-legged babies that have helped protect us.
Yeah. My first one was Juma. She was a narcotics only canine that also did tracking. She worked. She was a sweet girl. She's found, I don't remember her stats right off, but numerous cases in Wood County and surrounded counties, because at that time when she came on board, she was a necessity for us in Wood County because we didn't have a canine at all.
Well, she's a celebrity.
Yes, 300,000 followers or whatever.
No, she's a celebrity.
Yeah. And, that's all, God, it's amazing how God took a dog and ministered with our information to so many, even around the world. I mean, I've still got people in England that she messages me on a regular basis, and she attests to, and I can't take any credit for it, never would. Never would. But she says, "Oh, you saved my life," and all I did was messenger back and forth. Just a real neat lady, and I'd send her some Juma gifts and coins, and she just really eat that up. But the kids, we always enjoyed going and visiting the kids. She was very easy to love on. She was very calm.
You're talking about in schools?
Yes, in schools and churches and homeschool events, just all over. And we took advantage of that to be able to pour into those kids. She got sick, had an autoimmune disease, and when she got sick, she had to retire, and we went down to Houston and picked out another dog. His name was Rocky. Most people don't know about Rocky.
I don't know about Rocky.
Yeah, we went and picked him out. We bonded for about a week. He was a good boy. We got back to Patrol Basic for Canine School. It's a 9-week school. And he didn't make it. He was a phenomenal drug dog, but I needed somebody that could track because we really had a need for it in Wood County for tracking, and he couldn't track his way to a bowl of dog food, but he was a real good boy. He went on to work for another agency, narcotics only. He's done great. So I came back with Mata. And Mata is a full patrol dog because with Juma, when we would do a track, we couldn't do a bad guy track because we'd get to the end of a track, and if the bad guy was aggressive or violent, then we had that issue.
Oh, I didn't see the difference. Okay,
yeah. And then, so Mata's full patrol, does the apprehension, the building searches, article searches. We've had a couple of officers have lost their body cams in a pasture. We send them out there, and he finds their keys, their body cams, or whatever.
Oh, my goodness.
We teamed up with some guys out of Sulphur Springs, Buddy Williams, Colt Patterson, been some just phenomenal dog handlers, and took us to a whole nother level. Buddy actually spoke at my retirement deal, and he said, first time I saw Kelly, he showed up and got Mata out of the truck, and he said, I stood there with my jaw open because I said, how do you get these dogs to obey off leash, and you have a full patrol dog that's capable of taking a grown man down? And Mike, they just took me from he had some obedience because we obviously had to pass the certification for NNDDA, which is another organization, and they got it to where all I have to do is tell him what to do, and he does it. And it was phenomenal. So we found a passion for tracking. His first track was I think it was around 2.5 miles for 2 homicide suspects in Wood County or over northern Wood County. He found one of them. The other one never went that same direction or what have you. So we knew that was just fun. It was me and him and a couple of deputies in the woods. And it was just it was very enjoyable, challenging, very challenging. So he got his expert tracking certification from a school out of I think they're out of Florida, but they came down and put on a seminar, and we did a lot of tracks. I think most of his apprehensions were tracks. So Juma ended up passing away. Got to meet Mata. I've got some pictures of Mata and Juma together. Pretty neat.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I think Mata had a crush on Juma. Just don't tell nobody. But it was dogs started coming on board. Wood County ended up getting another dog that was narcotics and tracking. Real good dog. And I started trying, of course, the whole time, even with Jim, I was training with a group out of Tyler. Steve Black, just one of my canine mentors, just one of the best guys you'll ever meet. Tyler PD's been there. I think he probably wrote Methuselah a ticket at some point, but he'll probably skin me for that one. but just good people. It was that camaraderie I found in canine teams. I really did. It was a tight-knit group that had same challenges, same restraints as far as budget restraints and schedules and stuff, but it was a passion that you're not going to have somebody in with a dog that lasts without a passion that care about those dogs. Yeah. Obviously, it takes a unique individual to bond with those dogs and train with them. So we got to all be close. We'd have a couple of dogs that passed away, and there was a procession of canine vehicles that was just like a police officer. Yes. I mean, they're our partners. I spent 12 plus hours a day with Mata right there with me and Juma right there with me. So that bond is there, and it's definitely still there. So I got to retire with him. So me and Mata are kicking it at the house.
Yeah.
And he's
How old is Mata now?
Mata's 6. He'll be 7 in March.
Oh, he's a young man.
He's accustomed now to 5 French bulldogs, a Boston Terrier, and a Bernese Mountain Dog.
I've seen that.
Yeah, he's a mess. He tolerates them.
He may prefer drug dealers over the Boston Terrier, though. I don't know. We were Boston people. Well, folks, let me tell you, and Kelly knows where I'm headed with this. You had to hear the backstory to get to the meat of the matter. Everybody shares a common bond that comes on this podcast. They have withstood something, and so we're going to get to the point of the story. Kelly, what was the date your life changed? That was it a year and a half or 2 years ago?
It was November 9th of 2022, and I'll tell you something funny about that. That was the day I was saved.
Oh, my goodness.
The day I was notified of a federal indictment by the United States government, a.k.a. the Department of Justice, was November 9th, which was the day I was saved, 37 years prior.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I don't believe in coincidences.
No, never.
The day I was indicted was November 10th, my Marine Corps birthday. Yep.
Kelly, there's going to be a lot of people listening to this podcast that are 100% in the know on all of this, but just as much as you can tell us.
Oh, I'll be transparent about all of it.
Just tell us what happened.
Yeah, so basically I was called to assist another agency, and I'll be general for certain reasons because I'm not wrapped up in all that. That's not why we're talking. But I was called to help another agency with a barricaded felon. We went in and got him. I ended up with a broken finger and a messed up knee. My dog was choked and attacked by his pit bull on 2 different occasions in this, I'd say, 90-second window. We went and got him out. He kicked Mata. Mata bit him on the foot he was kicked with. He got 3 stitches in his foot, went to jail. That's pretty much the meat and potatoes.
And you assumed it was just like another day in the life of law enforcement.
Yeah, I did. We were in an area that is Facebook famous for police, anti-police, a couple of anti-police people, and I just move on from that. There's those everywhere. And, like several friends of mine said that if we were in a bigger city, there's so many of them, nobody really listens to them because it's just chatter and hate and stuff like that, anti-police rhetoric. But I'd been dealing with that for a couple of years and never responded, didn't care. I just got tired of hearing about it.
Sure.
And the suspect at the time even told me that this Facebook keyboard warrior was going to take care of this. So what ended up happening is they made a report with the Department of Justice. They took it and ran with it. And we got with the DA's office there in Wood County. They looked at it. Suspect's attorney looked at it. Said there's nothing wrong with what happened. Everything was above board. So I got the notice that they were looking into it. Just kind of thought, hey, that's fair. Look into it, due diligence. The same people had already reported me for another use of force deal that nothing happened, and they unfounded that one. So I was starting to see the writing on the wall of even when you do the right thing, it's wrong. And that has came after the stuff that went down in Minneapolis. Law enforcement definitely changed after that. Whether you agree with it or not, my only challenge would be is there's a show on the Daily Wire called The Fall of Minneapolis. And it goes into the Derek Chauvin case in great detail.
Interesting.
And I never knew all the facts. I only knew what media was putting out there. And I never in a million years thought I would be subjected to something similar that the media tried to pull. I will say that Channel 19 did us right. They reported the facts. I'll leave it like that. Mm-hmm. Now, what happened after that is I was indicted on November 9th. Got my attorney on board, and I had paid a little, and most officers know you pay about $40 a month for legal protection or what have you. Never really thought I'd need it. I'd used it a couple of times for like clerical things and, hey, make sure I handle this right, stuff like that. this case ended up costing $300,000. And that CLEAT, Combined Law Enforcement of Texas, I think I just said the acronym wrong, but it's CLEAT. Most officers have either IT or TMPA, and the cops got to have that. If you're carrying a badge, or even if you're a civilian carrying a gun, you need to have something behind you, because even if you just do it right. Yeah. But anyways, I got a hold of my attorney, old Cody Skipper in Dallas, and he's was a former U.S. attorney, and looked at my case, and we had some experts come on board, and they said, you ain't done nothing wrong. Well, very candid with me. Then we saw people on the other side of our team doing stuff that was just wrong, and I'll just leave it like that. After we told them we're not pleading to anything, they offered me 3.5 years in prison. And, as cops, all we have is a reputation. So their first trick was to get it out on the news without notifying us of the indictment. So next thing you know, my kids are watching, their friends are watching me on KLTV, and, I'm this guy. Cody got on Channel 7 and told it like it was, and you look back on it today, and he literally said Kelly was doing his job, and we're going to prove that, and he did. After we didn't fold to the first one, they hit me with another one. They said I lied on my affidavit 14 or 15 times. I don't remember in court how they had it all underlined. Never told a lie. Same offer on the table, 3.5 years in prison. I'm not going to stand up in front of my family and God and say I did something wrong if I don't think I did. Now, if I would have went out there and done something wrong, lost my temper, whatever, that's different. But that just wasn't going to happen. Had a lot of friends that were contacted by them and were manipulated in ways that they see through now. We were told that if we didn't take a plea and we went to trial, they were coming after me for 11.5 years in prison, over a decade. Well, with all the facts that came out in the case and all the stuff they were trying to hide, let's go. God teaches us that when you've done all you can do is stand, and when you can't do anything else, what do? You stand. And that's what I hung my hat on the whole time. I never really knew how close you could be to Christ, and I'm not saying I didn't have family and just solid friends that surrounded me, because I did. I mean, they've been phenomenal, you included. And thank you in the church for all your prayers. True. But and your counsel through all of it. 100. My goodness, our lunches were always a blessing. But there were some dark days. There really was. But I had decided that this is what I'm going to do. Of course, I consulted with my wife and said, hey, here's what we're looking at. Mm-hmm. And everything we had worked for our whole life was on the line, because the intent was to sue, attack, everything for everything we had. So I talked to her, and she said, I don't think you did anything wrong, and you better not plea. Yeah. I tried to keep it from the kids best I could, because I didn't want to see them in my probably darkest hour. So the arraignment happened. They told me I had to get rid of all my guns. Of course, I own a gun store, which was comical. They said I had to get all the guns out of my house. Okay, so we emptied my safe. And I'm sitting there, Mike, and I'll never forget, Mama was sitting there with me, and start taking the guns out. Sounds crazy just be taking guns out, but when I latched on to baby girl's gun. Yeah. I realized I might not get to go hunting with her again.
Oh, my goodness.
So I, in front of my wife, I lost it. I just started. It was weird. It was uncontrollable sobbing, but it is what it is. Lasted a few minutes.
A lot was built up, though, Kelly.
Yeah, but and I'm I'm not here to be, let's feel sorry for Kelly. I really want to give you these details to see what God did with it.
No, we got to push through these.
Yeah. So that happened. Of course, the judge said, well, hey, you can still be a cop. You can still carry a gun at work, although you can't have a gun in your house. You can still have your gun store. You can still have a gun on your side while you're in the gun store, but you can't have a gun in your house. Okay, well, yes, ma'am. I'll do that. And I did everything by the letter. So I've got these strangers, and they were more professional than you can imagine, that came out and did my inspection, or house inspections, or whatever you call them, from federal probation, parole, whatever, supervisors, and they were phenomenal, very respectful. But they knew what was going on. And a lot of them in that circle were watching the case because they'd see the games that had been played across the country, with law enforcement being attacked by the DOJ. And, of course, at the time, Trump was in his battle. And I'm, of course, not comparing myself to him at all, but there was a lot of cops. So after this happened, I was on the phone with probably about 9 different officers that were in the same boat I was, of being indicted for something they didn't do wrong, just perception type thing. Got real close with them, got to pray with them, got to point them towards some scriptures, and how they really came across my contact information, other than they were just finding me on Facebook and messaging me. Really got to minister to some of them. We'd cry together, we'd laugh together, we'd talk about how it affected our family, how unjust it was, how other officers are being attacked, how new officers were not able to act quick enough because there's built-in hesitation. I had several officers that got out of law enforcement and said, Kelly, if you got tagged like this and you got attacked like this, that they couldn't stand up against it. And all I heard, Mike, and probably even from you, is how did you do it? It was not me. God held me up. He propped me up the whole time. I was in the Word probably 4 or 5 hours a day.
That's incredible.
Tony Evans and all of his ministry, watching his stuff, and I just engulfed myself with the Spirit. And so many times we're not really taught about the Spirit. We're taught about God in the Old Testament. We're taught about Christ during his ministry, but it's so often overlooked what the Spirit does for us. Not just in us, not just within us, but with us. So he's in us and around us, which is just is an amazing concept. You start studying that, as I know you know that. Got to minister to those guys, and it was a blessing. But I did get a phone call from one of them. Actually, it was an associate of mine that this gentleman had taught me in Morrow in a week-long canine school. And FBI knocked on his door, and a few days later, he shot himself. Had a beautiful family.
Oh, no.
Yeah, he had a beautiful family, beautiful wife, just a real good guy. I mean, he trained jiu-jitsu, so we got to talk a lot about that. And I always tried to hook him and Jeff up together, and he was just good people. I don't know the details of the case, don't want to know it and all that, or what happened with all of it, but I know that it's very taxing to not know where you're going to wake up. We'd have Christmas, and I'd literally think, am I going to be here next Christmas? It's crazy thoughts like that. But I will say the DA's office in Wood County, every one of the commissioners stood with me. The county judge stood with me. I had more people standing with me in the community than I ever imagined that have come to surface and contacted me, contacted Renee. They talked about the journey that we went through, and on a regular basis I would post, for whatever reason, the scriptures that I would go through, because I could see how it correlated with so many other challenges in life that other people were going up against. I was facing over a decade in prison. I was facing being separated from my family unjustly. So we walked through all of that, and I realized, I may be going through a lot, but there's people that have gone through a whole lot worse. Prayed through it, and I shared last night something that was very interesting. I wrote a prayer down, and it was 5 or 6 things that I prayed for. One was, don't separate me from my family. And the most important part of the 5 or 6 was the last sentence, Mike, of that prayer. And I normally don't write my prayers down. I just knew that I wanted to look back at this.
Absolutely.
At one point.
Journal it. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And it said, through this storm, give me the opportunity to minister to others. He answered every single thing on there. Mm-hmm. And pre-indictment, I guess I'll share with you what you called my Elijah moment if you want, or we can move on past
let's talk about that for a second.
Okay.
If you're comfortable with it.
I'm comfortable with it. I'll work my way through it. Used to, when I was in church, I'd hear somebody say, well, they heard God or they saw God, and I kind of roll my eyes, and I wouldn't disbelieve them, but I never really wrapped my mind around what that meant because I'd never experienced it. But I didn't sleep on a regular basis through that year, and I'd get up if I couldn't sleep or whatever. I'd go outside and just hang out for a minute, trying to get sleepy, lay back down. Because normally when I got up 2 o'clock in the morning in that season, I was up for the rest of the day. So I got up and walked out the front door, and the floodlights were on, and I walked out, and stars. It was just a real clear night. And I walked back in, turned floodlights off. I just wanted to enjoy the evening, middle of the night. This was in September. Like I said, in November I was indicted, and I knew it was coming as far as the potential of it happening or what have you. So I walked out. And so let me set the setting for you. We live out in the middle of nowhere. We've got a pond out front. It's got a bunch of trees around it. The tree frogs that time of year are always chirping and rattling and all that. Got a little 30-foot flagpole, and the flag and the brackets or the fasteners on it are always hitting the flagpole. Got a pool pump going, air conditioners running. My bride's got 2 or 3 little Martin houses out front, so they're always making racket. I don't know if they're wrestling or what they're doing in there, but they're always making racket. And we live by a pretty busy road and by railroad tracks. There's a coyotes howling and all that stuff. But Mike, when I walked back out there wasn't a sound other than my inherited tinnitus from the Marine Corps. All I could hear is that. So it was like a little bit of a ringing, but I heard nothing else, and I thought it was so weird. And I literally said out loud, of course, if you'd have been standing on the other side of the fence, you'd know Kelly's losing his mind. And I said, well, God, I'm listening. And all I heard, Mike, was, I've got this. I can't say that I could tell you what God's voice sounds like. I can't. It's just hard to really explain, and I don't know how to explain it other than something else said, I've got this. And I was floored. And as soon as he said that, however somebody might want to explain that, all the noise came back. Birds chirping, flagpole clanking, AC running, pool pump I could hear, coyotes in the background, trains running. I heard a train just about a mile and a half from the train tracks, and then the main road by us making noise. But it was clear as day. So I walked halfway around the pool, and here I am talking to myself again like a full-running idiot, I guess. And I said, I guess I'm Thomas the Doubter because I don't know what just happened. And all I got back was, I'm only going to say it once. And that carried me through.
I started to say that was reassuring, though. It
was. And, of course, there's probably a atheist answer out there for anything, but I'm not hearing it. I know what I heard. And I can tell you when somebody else says that they hear or have an experience like that, probably might want to listen and hold them close. And I know when I shared it with you, you called my Elijah moment. Of course, I'm not worthy of anything like that. But that carried me through a lot. But the teaching part of that to me is, even though I was blessed to be able to experience that, I never was satisfied with being patient. And I would always ask him why, because I wanted this thing to end right now. But my prayer is if you want this indictment to happen, teach me how to teach others. So 1 came, 2 came. We end up in the trial.
And by the way, just interrupt.
Mm-hmm.
There was that waiting period. How long was that from the moment they served you, indicted you, to when the trial was over? How long was that? Year and what?
It was November 9th of 22. The trial was over in June of 23.
Okay.
They moved very quick.
Okay.
Yeah. And at one point I had it down to the hours because somebody asked me how many days. I said, I'm going to break it down into hours with you because that's how it felt. But we had we had pre-trial and all that stuff. I'd always been at the other side of the table and had to, I went to the FBI National Academy and had the utmost respect for those guys. And I still do because, just leave it like that. But it was a 5-day trial. Voir dire is where they picked the jury. A mess of jury members in there, and they picked the jury. And 5 days of trial. And the jury instructions, I think they said it takes a little over an hour to give instructions. And within 2.5 hours, they came back with a not guilty verdict. Took me off my feet. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just had to sit down in my chair, and I knew he was there the whole time, but I didn't know what his plan was. I had no idea what he wanted us to do yet or next. And we had, one of the issues was that weekend we were literally leaving that evening, with or without me. The family was going to Alabama for baby girl's birthday trip. That was a good trip. But boy, I was tired. But Mike, I think as we move into that victory and so many victories in the middle of it, I've learned a lot about the storm. I've learned a lot about patience. But I think the season that I'm in now is I've learned a lot about forgiveness.
Okay, go back. What was that? What was one of your, I'm taking notes here, but you had a Joseph moment too. Don't ever forget that.
Yeah.
Joseph, if some of you who are listening don't know, he was falsely accused and went through a terrible time. You've given us a lot of nuggets here, but could we talk just a little bit about betrayal?
Yeah.
You had served in this country, and then you moved into law enforcement. You have always basically, directly or indirectly, served this country, and now this country is coming after you. Help me wrap my mind around that. Help the listeners wrap what could that possibly feel like?
Well, I'll tell you where it came to front and center was one of my Marine Corps League meetings, and I was very transparent with our crew at the Marine Corps League, and they were mad. Mm-hmm. I've got a lieutenant colonel and a gunnery sergeant and a first sergeant. They were livid, and they were all at the trial. Even brought a dog in the federal court. Thought that was funny. But when we were doing the pledge, I looked at the stars and the bars different. I looked at our flag different. And there was a few times, Mike, I would just stand, and obviously at attention, saluting our flag, but I didn't have anything to say. Didn't have anything bad to say, but I just looked at her different. And then the paperwork, it said the United States of America versus Kelly Smith. And when you see that, you're going, what?
What?
But
that's terrible.
I've met so many veterans that used force overseas legitimately. And some, as we speak, are sitting in prison over it. There's a ton of stories out there of what I call heroes, special forces guys, all these monsters, the good side of monsters, if you will, that are sitting in prison for doing what they took an oath to do, and for political reasons or whatever the reasons were. There's a ton of stories out there for these guys, and they're my heroes because they're sitting there and their families having to suffer. You asked me a while ago about what should young officers do. The young officers, you need to build your bride up or your husband. You need to build your spouse up because they didn't sign up for this. My bride and my kids did not sign up for this.
That's great counsel.
Baby girl had to face the music at school I'm putting my filter on, by these kids heckling and Facebooking and Instagram and TikTok or whatever you call all that stuff.
You
And,
bet.
it's not fair to them. They didn't sign up for it. I did. And it's just absolutely not fair to the spouse and the family. So that's one of the things that was heavy. But the betrayal side, when it really came, like I explained, but it was when they rounded up so many officers to testify against me. And I won't get into the details of all that stuff, but I had one of them sit up and say, he's my mentor, he's my friend, and then come to find out he was threatened with prosecution if he didn't do what they wanted him to do, and that came out. I think you were there that day, that came out, and it was just all of those false things going on or unethical decisions made. So the betrayal on that is probably what stuck the most. But and this is a good guy. He's a good cop. He's got a good family. Love him to death. I know, it sounds crazy to say. I've had so many people say, man, I'd turn my back on him. I would never this, that, and the other, and I would do this to him. I'm not. I called him that Saturday. We got to Alabama that Saturday morning when I got up, and I prayed about it. Mike, I prayed about it because I was really struggling with the forgiveness part. I called him and I said,
I cannot imagine.
Yeah, I called him and said, because I'd heard that him and another officer were physically sick and going to the doctor over this thing. And, of course, I couldn't talk to him. I couldn't call and say, hey, it's okay, nothing, because they put another charge on me or something. I don't know.
Right.
I was told not to. So that separation of friendship, and, man, let me tell you something. When these officers, if you see an officer on the news, young, old, whatever, start to be attacked, keep in mind the best thing you can do is let that officer know you're there for him, because it got cricket quiet.
Yeah, that's good counsel.
It was very quiet. Everybody just stops calling because you're toxic. You're absolutely toxic at that point. And I don't fault anybody for it. I've talked to a lot of folks, and the answer was I just didn't know what to do. I didn't know whether to call you. I didn't know if you wanted to talk about it. I didn't know if you could talk about it, which I couldn't. So I don't fault any of them. But when I hear an officer going through that, I'm calling them. I'm going to take them out to lunch. We're going to go talk, give them a hug, let them cry.
How in the world do you well, let me just put it this way, Kelly. There are lots of people that have had less done to them than you have, and they are still living in unforgiveness. Is there something you can tell our audience? I mean, what got you to a point where you could forgive, or who got you to that point?
God did.
Okay.
Absolutely. It was not me. I can't take credit for any of it, Mike. It was the Holy Spirit. I'll tell you what I did is I started reading, and I've read. I mean, if you're not reading every morning, you're wrong.
It's pretty unhealthy spiritually.
It is. And, I'm waiting on God to talk. Well, are you reading his word? Because it's not a normal incident for him to talk to you. And after what you call, and I'm going to use it forever, my Elijah moment, after that, he talked to me every single day in the Word. I would open the Word, and the next chapter would be application. So let me answer your question in that, Jesus performed 2 miracles in Jerusalem, documented, right? One was in John 5 and one was in John 9. Well, John 5 was the man at the pool, the lame man at the pool. Well, guess what the lame man at the pool did with Jesus is he gave him an excuse. He said, well, I was waiting for somebody to carry me over there. So that means that this man who was fixing to receive a phenomenal miracle from our Savior gave him an excuse of I'm waiting for what they are going to do in order to receive this blessing. And Jesus told him, get up. And I heard that, and I was like, okay, so what else is here? John 9, blind man. He was waiting on outside things, other people to do things to receive his blessing. And what did Jesus do? Told him to pick up the mud that he made with his spit.
Boy, that is true.
And go wash.
It's good.
So you've got our Savior in 2 situations in his hometown, only 2, and he gives us perspective of a new way to walk and a new way to see. And all you have to do is say, yes. Well, he commands us to forgive. And if we don't, we are truly missing the blessings of the Holy Spirit.
That's rich.
And it's one of those, so what I did is, and I'm talking about my life, I wrote down everything. Say it was parent issue, past work issue. Say it was your spouse issue. My wife's perfect, by the way. I didn't have nothing to write down on her.
I would say, after knowing you on a personal level, your wife is perfect.
So I wrote down these things, and if all we have to do is be willing to forgive, that's literally all we have to do. So I wrote them down, and then the next part was, then our Savior died on the cross for our sins, horrible death. And he told the Father, they know not what they do. So in that, we don't really know what we're doing when it comes to forgiveness. So all we have to do is be willing. He commands us to forgive, and he will take care of the rest. So if he takes care of the rest, I just wrote them down. Something easy. Wrote them down. Took me a little red marker. Covered it with the blood of Christ.
Oh, my goodness.
Write another one down.
I love that.
Pray for. Be willing to forgive. Because it's not for, we can't wait. Because a lot of times what you're looking for is restitution, resolution, justice.
Sure, absolutely.
Reckoning, the bad side of that. And I finally realized I don't care if these people think they did wrong or not. Most do. I'm not going to respond to the negativity. I'm not going to respond to the keyboard warriors. I'm just going to forgive them. And through the whole thing, Mike, and I can honestly tell you, I prayed for the agents. I prayed for the attorney's office. I prayed for the ones that testified against me.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't even tell you I didn't want to, because I knew I wanted to, because I knew it would, by obedience, I had to. And I didn't have a problem doing that part. But, if you have somebody that's victim of rape, victim of violent homicide, as far as family members, a car wreck or whatever, and it's somebody's fault, and you carry that hate, it's just going to eat you up.
Yes, sir.
And I realized that, and I realized that my days of waiting for resolution, restitution, or reckoning, I was done with. I'd ask for them to be forgiven, cover it with the blood of Christ, and from there I was able to check the box. Now,
boy, I like the red pen thing.
Yeah.
That'll teach now. I like that.
But what I found out was it's not instantaneous. It's a process. It's a moment in time that you decide to forgive.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
But you have to be ready for the process. And Mike, I was training the other day, and I had a trigger. Somebody said something, and I thought about the situation. There's probably not a day that goes by I don't think about some little aspect of the trial, and I hope time will heal that. But so I start thinking about it. My wheels start spinning, and my alpha little personality starts going. I was like, you know what, Father, I'm done. Cover it with the blood of Christ, and Mike, it was gone. It's gone.
Wow.
So I think if you use that process, I don't think you need to have the misconception that it's gone, but there's a process of healing. Just keep giving it to him. And the more you give it to him, the more he's going to fix. And if nothing else, maybe it's a test. Maybe you got some Job stuff going on. And he wants to see how you're going to deal with it. And he's going to see if you're going to deal with it yourself, because he's the administrator of justice.
Yeah, sure.
And the way I've always looked, and I'm going to tell you, the Marine Corps side of me, the 27-plus year cop side of me wants to handle things a whole lot different than how we're taught, which I know is wrong. But I also decided that if I think I'm better than God, and because a lot of people, we'll reach out, we'll lash out, we'll say something, we'll keyboard warrior that thing on Facebook or whatever, then you have just stepped into God's footsteps of saying you know better than he does on how to handle a problem.
Oh, that's good.
And I don't want nothing to do with that.
Yeah, you're right.
I don't. So that's what's kept my mouth shut. And I've just one of the people that were entangled in this thing, tricked, manipulated, came back to me and he said, "Man, I don't know if you know how sick I was." He explained it to me, and he said, "You're the reason why I'm in
sick
church."
From worrying.
Worrying, yeah. And he said, "Well, you're the reason why I'm in church now with my family." And this is a monster of a man. I mean, he was one of my canine mentors. Love him to death. Got a great heart. And I had a little bit of corrections. And no, wasn't me. This ain't me at all. And I don't want anybody to ever have the misconception that I can take even 1 ounce of credit for anything, because it's a spirit.
What a story.
Yeah, it's a spirit.
What a story. And Kelly, before, so not guilty.
Mm-hmm.
You go back to Wood County and you working a little bit, still in law enforcement, and then you retire.
Yeah, I did a couple more years.
And you've got so many other interests. You've got some protectors that you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
Have built a great business.
Yeah.
And what is very interesting to me, it's kind of terrible to have to suffer to have a story, but now that you've suffered, you're sharing that story.
Oh, absolutely. I've had the opportunity, Mike, to even do, we've always done prison ministry. And
which blows my mind. A cop.
Oh, it's fun, though.
I know.
Because once they figure out you're a cop and you actually care, because that even putting some really bad guys in jail.
Yeah.
And I always treated them with respect, best I could. There's some that just it doesn't adhere to, but any chance that we had, Jeff and I both, we'd tell them about Jesus. And we'd tell them, look, we're not judging you. You're good people, best I know, that made a bad decision. Let's just move on. And I never forget, Mata caught one day that ran from us, tried to do a little fighting and all that kind of silly stuff. And we got back to the back of the ambulance because he ended up getting bit. Got to the back of the ambulance, and he's in handcuffs, and we're sitting there. And I said, man, why'd you do that? He said, man, I don't know. He said, I got a little girl, and she's not going to be happy with me. Mm. I got to sit in the emergency room with that gentleman, and I'll call him gentleman on purpose. He made some bad decisions about drugs and running from the cops, and it was wanted in 2 different counties and all that. And we sat in that emergency room and prayed together. And maybe one day I'll get to see where he's ended up, because I hope he's still doing good. But he apologized for running. He apologized for all the stuff he did. But there's not a lot of people out there like that.
And you're getting to speak. And I need our audience to know this, too. You're getting to speak at some churches now.
Yeah.
And you are willing to sit down and talk to anybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, I will tell you this. We're going to wrap up. I've kept you too long, but, boy, you hit on so much today, but you realize you hit on everybody's albatross. At some point, almost every believer I've ever come in contact with has got to deal with forgiveness.
Yeah, absolutely.
At some level, it may be in business, it may be relational, but they have to deal with it.
And it's a process, Mike. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I've dealt with everything I can.
Yeah. But
the process is there.
Well, and the trigger may happen again tomorrow, too.
It will. I guarantee it will.
Yeah.
But the good thing about it is use that as a way to get back to the Father.
Amen.
That trigger happens.
Trigger should be a trigger to pray.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's every chance. Yeah. God, I need you. I cannot do it by myself.
Yep. Yeah. Kelly, you've got a phenomenal story. We are so thankful that where you were, which in a million years you never would have thought you'd been sitting in a federal courthouse with your sweet wife out there in the audience and some friends and family members. But where you are right now is a product of what you went through and the man you are. And I've always thought the world of you, but I'm telling you, Kelly, you're not the same guy that I met 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, God has tempered you, through fire. You understand, and you can relate to the early apostles that understood that there is no Christian growth without suffering, no Christian growth without pain.
Absolutely.
And it is a daily process. We thank you so much for being here, Kelly. Appreciate your word.
Appreciate you.
Look forward to seeing the feedback on this.
Yeah, I appreciate your friendship. More
Absolutely.
You know.
Me too, Kelly. Me too, Kelly, brother. Appreciate you. God bless you.